Hello, this is my friend Chris Espianl, who's been in a few of my videos before, but we're doing a book review in case you can't tell from the title, and the book we want to review is Gantz Omnibus 1. Now, this collects the first 3 volumes of the manga series Gantz, which was written and illustrated by Hiroya Oku. I'm saying that right,
yes.
Right? In case you don't know, I spent a good 5 minutes trying to figure out how to actually pronounce the author's name, and throughout the video, I'm bound to butcher it again, I'm sure, and I'm sure we're both probably going to butcher the names of some of the characters in this review. But you introduced me to Gantz because I know you're like a huge manga fan. I'll admit I'm somewhat of a novice when it comes to mangas and anime. Like, I only recently started getting into them, but I know you really grew up on them. And I know you're like really, because you're an artist and you really do sort of, I noticed that your artwork definitely has a manga-esque kind of style to it.
Yeah, I take a lot of inspirations from all of it from the East culture.
Now, is it pronounced manga or manga? Because I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Manga.
Now, Gantz ran from 2000 to 2013, so the series ran for a long-ass time. Now, how were you first introduced to Gantz, and what is your opinions of it?
I was first introduced to Gantz by the anime adaptation of it. I only saw maybe 3 episodes. At the time, I was very... I wanted something edgy, you know? I was already looking into Berserk, and that's everybody's gateway to edginess. But then after that, you kind of want something, you know, more, you know, some variety. So I was first introduced to Gantz, seeing the animation, maybe the first 3 episodes, made me more interested in the reading materials.
Yeah, Gantz I thought was a really interesting manga series. Again, I've only read the volumes that are collected in this omnibus, so I don't know if I could say I'm a full-fledged fan. I feel like I do have to read more in order to call myself a fan of this series, but I could definitely see myself becoming a fan because I did dig what I've read so far.
One of the cool things about the author of Gantz is if you were to see any of his social media, any of his tweets and everything, look at the latest movies I watch. He's a really big movie buff. He loves movies. He loves Western movies specifically. So you see any of his Twitter tweets and anything, it's nothing but movies. Look at the movies. So a lot of his written materials, his graphic novels have a lot of influences from Western movies, surprisingly.
Definitely. I definitely saw an influence of... This almost seemed to be a cross between... There's a science fiction book series called River World that the premise of that kind of reminds me of the premise of this. And also, you even compared it to this. There's a lot of similarities between this and Stephen King's The Running Man.
Oh yeah. You know, having all these people forced to participate in a game that puts the boundaries of putting their life at stake. I feel like it has similarities in that way.
Now, what the plot of Gantz is, it begins where these 2 high school students who used to be best friends but have sort of drifted apart, they end up at the same subway station together purely by coincidence, and a homeless man ends up falling onto the subway tracks, and they go to help him, and they help him off the tracks, but then a train comes killing them both. After they die, they all of a sudden wake up in this strange apartment with all these total strangers who have also recently died, and it turns out these people have been resurrected by this entity called Gantz, and Gantz gives them all these weapons, and now they have to hunt down and kill these alien monsters, and they have to collect a certain number of points, and if they get enough points, Gantz will return them to their old lives. Now, in Gantz, you get a very diverse group of characters. You have high school students, politicians, criminals, celebrities, a grandmother, a dog even, and they're all brought together by this entity and put in this horrific game. But what do you think of the characters in Gantz?
I think, as far as the characters, I like that. You know what I mean? I like the fact that these characters are very human. There's nothing special about them other than they're basically your average schmoes, your mothers, the kids that you see walking in the park, the businessman, the senator, all walks of life, like you mentioned before, all like forced in this game. You know what I mean? And these guys these people would have never have met each other, never knew that they existed if it weren't for, you know, this game that brought them together.
Yeah, because it's sort of that idea that death is the one thing that binds us all. That's the one thing that we all have in common, is death. Mm-hmm. It is the great equalizer, and that is sort of the subtext in the manga is death.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think, that's what I like about Gantz. You know, there are some things that, for sure you heard the criticisms about the book.
Oh yeah, there's definitely things in this that could be considered problematic if you're looking at it from a Western point of view.
So one of the things that I find very interesting is that a lot of these characters, again, are nothing really special about them, but the situations that brought them together, they each have a very interesting story. Even though each one of them have their own story, they're very unique. And even though they're very human, you know what I mean? Like, you could relate to pretty much anybody in any situations. You know, nobody invites you to a situation. Things just sort of happen. And it kind of puts them in this surreal world where, you know, I was just in a death scenario. What's going on? Boom. I'm in this room. An orb is starting to speak to me. And we're surrounded by a whole bunch of people who knows it just as much as I do, and throughout their tragedy have led them to commit acts or done things that lead them to commit suicides or to a death situation that led them into that scenario.
And I like how it's a mix between sympathetic characters and characters who really aren't sympathetic at all.
Yeah.
Like, I like how it's almost like whatever this entity is, it doesn't discriminate.
It's crazy.
Just like how death doesn't discriminate.
Yeah. Death comes for us all. It doesn't matter what your age is, who you are, you know. And again, I feel like that's the common denominator. One thing that probably a lot of people tend to overlook when it comes down to these type of books is it's kind of like when you see a bunch of like a dramatic event. Let's just say, for instance, you brought a whole bunch of people together. There's a horrific event, and you're displaying it. You know, there's some people that may say that it's gore for gore's sake. You know what I mean? And the horror and everything that's happening to these people. But I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's I think the dark themes to it, the stories to it, and even the unique, how unique all these average people who would have never known each other if it weren't for the situation, their stories that led them up to it, and how unique that is.
Now, the main character of the manga is a 15-year-old boy named Kurono, I think is how you pronounce the name.
Kurono, yeah.
Which, if that is how his name is pronounced, what a freaking unfortunate name.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because he's a pretty exceptionally unlikable character.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Kurono, let me tell you something. When I first read that book, I did not like that character at all.
Yeah, like the way in the beginning, how he's judging people around him, like he looks at that old man and is like, I bet he's never had a deep thought in his life. It's like,
Yeah.
What the fuck are you, kid?
Yeah, like, and when the old lady came through and asked him for directions, and he basically told her, like, you know, you should learn to help yourself, you know what I mean? Don't be a burden.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I've had those moments too where I just was not in the mood to deal with people, but still, he's an unlikable prick, but something that you pointed out to me is that a lot of teenagers are, and in a way, he is kind of realistic for a teenager.
Yeah.
And also, it's realistic that not everybody is going to be likable.
After reading the whole series and going back to it, my second go around, I started to understand that character because when, like you said before, I started to see things like, so yeah, this kid has nothing going for him. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have any goal as far as school, and as far as how he views life is basically, I'm going through school because this is something I have to go through.
Yeah.
And that's not really much because the schools and the environments that he's placed in are really fucked up as well. Like, for instance, I think there's a classmate.
There's that bully who tears students' teeth out.
Yes.
But it almost seems like that might be a little heightened. I'm not sure.
No, I mean, I don't know to the extent, but I have heard from a lot of people that bullying, like, the way that they describe in manga, typically the harsh realities, having the kid up in a rooftop and taking his money and really doing insane shit, I heard that that's actually a bad thing that's going on in Japan.
Oh, really?
To that magnitude, yeah. I don't know as far as to that degree. I think he goes by the name the dentist, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man. But the environments that the main character he's put in, you know, ultimately made him the prick that we see him, you know? But one of the things that I like about him is I can understand him. I like you said before, I remember being in school not knowing where the hell I'm going to go at and just thinking about, you know, my other head, you know? I'm just basically, you know, I'm just thinking about getting laid, girls, and you know, how to get money. And so in a way I was kind of a narcissist, you know, mentality, and a lot of people were back in that time, you know, back in, you know, their childhood. I kind of relate to it after my second go around. I understood it.
Yeah, but for me, my favorite character was Keo or Kiko or Kiko, not Kiko. That
you pronounced it I kept right the first time.
Keo?
Kito.
Oh yeah. We might both be mispronouncing his name, but he was definitely my favorite character. He's easily the most likable character of the main cast of characters, I think. One thing I really like about him is a lot of the story could be seen as very nihilistic, but he's like the one character who kind of dares to be an optimist, even in this really grim situation. And as you pointed out, he actually, unlike Kurono, Kyo, or however you pronounce his name, actually has something to fight for and something to live for. He has a younger brother who he has to take care of.
You know, that's very common when I talk to people they said, you know, when I first read the book, I liked the other protagonist better than the main one, that, you know, Kurono. I like the other, you know, Kato better over Kurono because he's such a humble character, because he the difference between Kurono and Kato is Kurono, his situation is like you mentioned before, he really doesn't have anything to fight for. But Kato is a different story. Now he's not just going through this game for survival's sake, you know what I mean? He's not even thinking about himself. Throughout the whole time of him going through these horrendous events, he's thinking about, shit, if I'm not here, who's going to take care of my little brother? And you know, that makes him very honorable, and a lot of people, like, you know, rooted for him. They like that character overall.
I think you told me that Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira was a huge influence on this manga, and I could see that in the sense of how the protagonists are, because Karida is considered to be the protagonist of Akira, yet honestly, after reading that manga, Kei, I think, is the more compelling character from that series. Oh, yeah. So, you know, I think that's kind of the same thing here, where the secondary protagonist, for all intents and purposes, should have been the main protagonist.
Yeah, and you know what the crazy thing is? And Akira, it has that same environment, too. The reason why they were delinquents, and they were pieces of crap. I remember the main character, he essentially got one of his girlfriends knocked up. You know, he had a child, and he just essentially didn't even care, with her bitching in the background. So,
And you would never hear from her again.
Ever again. So it's like, but if you look at the bullies and the school environments and how the teachers were brutalizing the students even then, you know, the teachers were punishing the students, like beating the crap out of the students. So it does have that awareness with the school's bullying system and how harsh it is that these characters grow them into being these narcissist characters that we fall in line with these stories.
The other main character is a girl named Kei, no relation to the character of Kei from Akira, who we just mentioned, but you have a girl named Kei who committed suicide and is then resurrected by Gantz, and she's actually a pretty complex and sympathetic character. The issue is how this character is presented. I could see being very problematic, at least looking at it from a Western lens, because she's naked when she shows up, which story-wise does make sense because she was in the tub when she slit her wrists, but it's how it's presented in the manga. It's so clear that she's kind of there for titillation's sake and kind of there for fan service because she is very, very sexualized in the story. Some of it does kind of make sense in terms of the story, because the main character is a teenage boy, and yeah, a teenage boy probably would react in a arguably problematic way if a naked girl all of a sudden showed up right in front of him, but you know, I could see people. I'm not really offended by it per se, because I understand a lot of this is an aspect of Japanese culture, but I could see some people being sort of offended by how this character is presented in the manga.
Yeah.
And even like a lot of the situations she gets in, because I am going to say this, some of the characters do act very creepy around her.
Oh yeah. She went through a lot of situations when she first arrived, right? Like her first appearance, you know, she almost got raped, right?
Yeah, which, you know, that was fucked up.
Yeah, you know, and you hit it on the nail. She is definitely fan service, and I believe.
Yeah, she's definitely a fan servicey character, but I do like that the author at least tried to not make her a bland, two-dimensional character. Like, he tried to give her, like, some depth, even though she is kind of there for titillation's sake.
Yeah, right. You know, despite the visuals, you know, I mean, the big knockers, round, robust type of, slim Barbie doll type of frame, and you'll see that type of work in his novels. But you are correct. You hit on the nose. They're not just for the sake of appeal, you know, visually. It's not just to get that dopamine rush when you see a hot girl, you know. These characters, even those characters, have complex stories behind it. So you're absolutely right. You know what I mean?
But there were things that even kind of weirded me out, like when she's staying over Kuronu's apartment and she starts asking him to call her pet, which is like, what the fuck is going on here? Which, I mean, I don't want to give away the revelation about her character, but I think the reason she's asking him to call her pet is because she's starting to feel less than human at that point, but still, that was just a little weird. Even like when Kano, when he gives her his coat, he says something to her to the effect of, put this on or I might attack you myself, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why the fuck would you say that?
Yeah. So there was a thing that the people were going at him. The people were going at the creator of Gantz. They were saying, you know, this thing is just gore for gore's sake. This is, you know, nudity. It's garbage. Doesn't mean anything. Which they could be far from the truth. But he said somewhere along the lines, and it's not his exact words, but he says something along the lines of, you know, I like what I like. I make what I like. You know, essentially. You know, so but one of the things that I see is in his books, he really dives into human nature. Every single character is not just good or bad. even between their moral characters, like this is exactly what they are. But even between that, you could kind of split a line in between. There's even a gray line in between the most purest characters that he creates. You know, I feel like for instance, the situation with that character, for instance, I don't know if he was suggesting that she was so sexually appealing that even the most noblest of characters is not, doesn't have any form of shield around his desires, and he just makes it prevalent by throwing his coat and just, being completely rude. I also noticed that he's kind of more harsh towards her. Have you noticed that? For him being a nice guy, he's a little harsher towards her.
Yeah, that is something that, not to continually use the word problematic, but could be considered a little problematic, because in that moment, it's almost like he's blaming her for the fact that she almost got raped, which is completely fucked up and wrong.
So the creator or the author actually took a lot of the criticisms of his book seriously, like to the point where his next work after Gantz, he actually did a segment where he had the antagonist of that series kill off a bunch of video bloggers, as revenge. So I think somewhere around his stories, he actually does put a lot of his crazy kinks. I mean, there's no way in hell you have that, and then you have the little dog in her interactions.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
That was weird. But yeah, I don't know if maybe he's working something out through his artwork. Again, I'm not I'm not offended by it. I'm just saying that I can see people having an issue with it.
And I think that's a big thing that's happening at the current moment. Actually, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about the differences between Western comics and Eastern comics, and even now that the Japanese manga is becoming more popular, and now we have these American publishers that are racing to grab publication to bring the English adaptations to them here. So now they're becoming so popular, but the type of things that they would be okay with over there, I can understand from a person who may not have been exposed to that, opening a book like this and be like, what the hell is this? Why is this even in stores?
Yeah.
How could this even be in stores? I understand somebody who's naive to the culture. I understand from their perspective. At the same time, I understand the freedom of writing and self-expression in Japan, that they have more openings to making their stories the way they are.
Yeah.
So I understand the argument on both sides.
It's interesting to sort of look at Gantz almost through the lens of religion to some degree, because in a way what the characters are experiencing is a kind of afterlife, and some of the characters even think that they're in hell in the beginning of the story. And I liked that. I liked this sort of sci-fi take on the afterlife, and I know later on in the series the characters meet a being who may or may not be God, so there is sort of an aspect of spirituality to it, and I also got the impression that these alien monsters that they're hunting down might not necessarily be demons per se, but maybe they might be where we got the idea of demons from.
And again, it just really shows it shows a lot of diversity. You're gonna see a lot of religions. You're gonna see a lot of monsters from different sorts of mythology, different religions. One of the things that I like about Gantz that I find that's really cool is some of the monsters, as you described before, they're very ancient in origin, and a lot of these creatures are aliens. So who could say that these creatures could have been here for thousands of years, and everything that we've written could have been our interpretations of it? It kind of shows that. I like that.
Yes, which you could also very much tie into H.P. Lovecraft, because Lovecraft's whole idea was, if there are gods, the gods are really aliens.
Yeah, it really does play into that. there's a lot of cosmic horror theme into Gantz. But this is one thing that I kind of like about Gantz. There's certain themes that Gantz plays around with. And I don't know if this was something that the author intended, but it's certainly there. There's the beginning scene where you see the dialogue with people, and they should help this homeless person. He's in a bad situation, and he's near death, and people should help out, but they're not doing anything. And the main character couldn't care less.
Yeah, it's really the other one who goes there first, and then kind of pressures Kurono to go onto the train tracks to help this guy.
Yeah, and he's like, fuck, like, we haven't even talked, like, why are you even, damn, like,
Yeah, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot, now I have to help out. But that situation kind of happens in real life if you kind of look at it. It kind of touch around that segment of when you see people in an everyday society, it's more common now to see a lot of people sit and watch something happen.
Yeah, like if there's some big emergency, they'll just record it on their phones instead of actually trying to see, hey, is this person okay? So there have been several adaptations of Gantz. You already mentioned the anime series, and I know there was a live-action movie and an anime film. Besides the few episodes you saw of the anime series, have you seen any of the movies at all?
I seen Gantz Zero, CGI. It takes place somewhere in the middle of the story, and there's even a series that's not written by the original author, though I'm not sure the continuity and how it ties into the original material. But there are also Gantz stories that have to do with people that get introduced into a feudal Japan, people from other regions of the world. So there are other Gantz small segment stories, comics, that leads into the... I don't know how much they tie into the story, but the main author of it periodically, would advertise these other things. I think there's a few video games that came out, but other than that, that's pretty much what I've been exposed to.
So yeah, that was our review on Gantz Omnibus 1. I recommend it. It's certainly not for everybody, but if you are into this stuff, I think you'll definitely dig this. Any final thoughts on the first 3 volumes of Gantz, or the series as a whole?
One thing I will tell you right now about the book, I mean, this is just like, it is very adultly, so if you're jumping into it, there's going to be a lot of visuals, but other than that, I highly recommend it. If you're a lover of horror, space, science fiction, action.
There's definitely some comedy in there as well, and drama. Actually, something I forgot to mention is, what do you think of the artwork in it?
Oh man, like, the artwork, that's one thing that I've never seen anybody draw like that. I've never seen anybody that create, as far as manga is concerned. Usually they have this kind of cartoony style that they've got inspiration from The Godfather of manga, and he got inspiration from Disney. So typically the characters kind of look like chibi, big heads, bubbly eyes, bubbles, very glittery, young looking, cutie type characters. These characters here are very realistically drawn, and you could tell when there's an old person, you could tell from the younger individuals, you could tell from the details of the monsters and the creatures that created, down to the buildings and the atmosphere. From an artist point of view, that it's grade A work.
So that was our review, and bye.